Want to say welcome. The 4x4 challenge is this. It's an opportunity for you to mobilize your church through evangelism. Evangelism is one of those things in the church that we all know we have to do. We all understand that it's a crazy necessity, but if you look at the church as a whole, most likely some of the fewest number of hours spent in church life is actually spent on the effort of evangelism. When in all reality, when Jesus left this earth, He left and the last thing He said was to go. And so we want to make sure that we look at the opportunity that we have as a church to mobilize our people. Yeah. What 4x4 is the opportunity to kind of put a process together, if you will, for evangelism. My pastor at I'm the student guy at Woodridge Baptist Church, and our pastor, Greg, several years ago began to pen what he thought was an unbelievable just process to be able to pursue evangelism in our day and time. And so the 4x4 challenge was drawn out of that understanding that as a church, there's got to be something happening in the order of evangelism. Now let me explain. As I grew up on a small town in Georgia, my dad would give me chores to do. And especially when we'd go over to Granddaddy's house, and we'd go to Granddad's house. Granddad lived on a good-sized farm, about 500 acres, and tons of cattle and tons of bales of hay to do, tons of stuff in the barn to do, hogs to slop, the whole 9 yards. And I would get a list in the morning of stuff to do. Now, they expected me to do those things. But I knew that when Granddaddy came home from working with Georgia Power, at the end of the day, that the first thing he would do after he came in the house and grabbed my grandmother, Selita Bell, who was 5 foot tall, laying down or standing up, and gave her a big fat kiss, he would go to that list and he would inspect what I was doing. And he would check and make sure that the hay was put where it was supposed to be, make sure that the hogs and the cattle were taken care of, make sure that the fence going to the back lot was closed so the cows couldn't get back there at night, and make sure that those things were done. Well, I think as Christians, this is an opportunity that we as a church can inspect what God expects of us to do, if that makes sense. That we can inspect ourselves and keep us going on. Now, as a 4x4 challenge, I want to explain a few things before we get there. Growing up, I grew up churched, okay? I grew up church, and I came to a place of knowledge of understanding Christ as my Lord and Savior at a young age. And because of that, as I grew up church, the church told me that I needed to love those people outside the church. Jesus loved them, and I needed to love them. And I was right on target with all that. And so I went on many mission trips. I did foreign mission trips, home mission trips. I spent 3 months in Canada doing missions in a highly French populated area, and enjoyed that time and opportunity. But it wasn't until I got back out of college that I came to the point and realized that I was told and I was instructed to love people outside the church, but I don't know that anybody ever told me to like those people. Now here's the difference. I was to love them for who they were and who they are because they were lost. Okay? But there's a difference in loving someone and liking someone, because I love you, I'm going to love you unconditionally. But to like you, I'm going to bring you in. And we're going to create relationship. And we're going to create community. I can love you and not have community. But I can't like you and not have community. And I believe with all my heart that as a church, we've got to make sure that we articulate to our people to like those people outside of our doors. Now here, I need you to do something for me real quick. On one of your books, in my book, whatever the book that's yours, I want you to write down for me the number of people who attended your church last Sunday. Just quickly. Yeah, just wherever. On the back of your hand, on your tongue, forehead, whatever. As long as it's not 666, okay? As long as it's not 666, all right? Just wherever. Just write that down. All right, now, you're writing that number down for me. Yeah, the number of people who attended your church last Sunday. The number of people, and maybe not yesterday, maybe the Sunday before. All right, somebody, on the count of 3, I just want you to tell me that number. 1, 2, 3. All right, cool. Now, here's what I need you to do. I got them all. You don't believe me? No. All right, so here's the deal. Now I need you to write down on there the exact number of people who are not in church within a 5-mile radius of your church Sunday. Here's the problem. As churches, we're more concerned about the people who are in church and not the people who are not in church. Oh me, oh my. Now, I believe with all my heart that if we have a change in mindset of who we are as Christians, we've got to begin to understand that we are immensely responsible for those people who are not inside the doors of our church. And if you begin to reach those people who are not inside the doors of your church, there's going to be problems within your church. Okay? And everybody's going, that's right. And I'm gonna take some time today before we get into the heart of 4x4 to explain some stuff for you and tell you that those disagreements are okay. And I get crazy excited about it because I hope you'll walk with me down this road. If you begin to reach those people that are out there, I'm telling you, there will be opportunity for change in your church, and some people will not like those. And we've got to learn how to manage that change or manage that opportunity. I want to show you the makeup of your church. Now, you're going to think I'm a crazy genius. I'm really not. This is every single church. This is my church, your church, wherever it is. There are people in your church who I would consider early adopters. They're 10%. There's an early majority, which is 30%, the silent majority, 50%, and the opponents are 10%. I want to base everything on two groups there. I want to base everything we talk about for the next little bit on the early adopters and the opponents. Now, your early adopters are going to be those people who are going to jump on board with you in an evangelism program like this, and they're going to move with you. They're going to see the need and the basis in order to move your church to a new place, which really isn't a new place because Jesus kind of did it 2,000 years ago, so it's really not a new place. It may be for your church. I know it was for some of the churches that I've been able to be a part of in my life. But the problem is that these people right here who are considered opponents, some of these people are going to raise their head when you start reaching out to the people in your community. Because if your community is like my community, there's every kind of person underneath the rainbow, and my church isn't made up like that, or wasn't. Our church wasn't made up like that, and we started reaching the people who are around us, reaching those people who need Jesus Christ, who weren't inside our doors and weren't inside the doors of the other churches in our neighborhood. We began to reach those. Those people came to come to church, and some of our people in our church said, holy cow, they're in my church. I said, you're right. They came to the pastor. They complained. I don't like the wild hair. Did you see where those piercings were? Did you see the tattoos on that guy you baptized Sunday? I'm like, holy cow. I dunked him. I saw him. They began to holler and scream. Please hear me. With all my heart and with all that I am, and I shake on the insides, I tell you this. Those 10% of people are the opponents of what God is doing within your church. Please hold on to your seat. Do not worry about that 10%. If they leave your church, they will go find another church to be a part of. Okay? They are not going to be lost, burned up, and bust hell wide open for the most part. Okay? Some of them I don't know. Some of them I wonder about. Anyway, we won't go there. Those people will find a home in another church, and they'll be just as miserable there as they are in your church, and they're going to holler and scream there. So please know and understand, pastors, teachers, lay leaders, whatever your role is within your church, when these people raise their weary head, and I'm telling you, it will happen. Okay? God's allowed me to be on church staff at some incredible churches for 20 years of my life. And they're there in every place. But let me tell you, until I learned that these people are going to find a church home somewhere, I worried to death about the opponents because they were crazy loud and they squeaked like crazy, and I spent a lot of time oiling that grease. Greasing that squeaky wheel. And it wasn't until I understood I'm not called to reach them because somebody else has done that. I'm called to reach the lost. And out of that and who I am and all that I am, I began to think and understand there's some things that we've got to do. There's some things in change that we've got to understand. And as a church, if we're not willing to change, we can choose to do one of three things. Do nothing and stay adrift. We can hold on and let it drive you where you should not go. You've got one of three choices. And the thing is, if you choose to do nothing, you still stay adrift. If you choose to do nothing, you've made your choice. You'll stay adrift. As a church, I have a huge desire to fulfill the Great Commission. As someone who is passionate about winning those people who are lost, I have to make the choice to go where God wants me to go. See, 2.5 years ago, God began doing something crazy in my life, and I'd been a part of a church staff in Canton, Georgia, and I'd been a part of his church staff there for 10 years. God had blessed us. We had grown from 400 to almost 1,400 in 6 years, and God did some amazing things there. And all of a sudden, God said, "Hey, you're leaving." I said, "What?" No. I know every high school coach. I know all the teachers. I can walk into any high school I want to, walk in, and I can do this and I can do that in these communities. I coach football. I'm on this board. I'm on that board. He said, "You're leaving." I could have made the choice to stay there. I could have stayed adrift and stayed there and walked on and rolled on. But let me tell you, God then moved my family to Houston, Texas, to Woodridge Baptist Church. My oldest son, 8 months ago, was diagnosed with a form of muscular dystrophy. And the leading surgeon who does the surgery that he's got to have on March the 7th lives here in Houston, Texas. I'd move all over the world for my boy. God's going to, as you choose to adjust and go where God wants you to go, what does he say? All these things will be added unto you. Seek first the kingdom of God. And I think as the church, as we seek first God's kingdom and we begin to move and go where God wants us to go, however that fits in your church, you'll be moved to that location. And I promise you this, guys and gals, please hear me out, that if the church is not about reaching the lost, then we need to change the name. Go ahead and take down Church of Thee or whatever and just stick a country club tag up there, because that's all it becomes. We're going to have this Bible study and care for these kids and do parents' night out and do mom's day out and do MOPS and do Bible studies and all this. That's great. But I choose not to be part of the frozen chosen, but to be a part of a living, breathing, vibrant church. And it doesn't happen unless we're reaching those that are around us. The 4x4 is a planned evangelistic strategy that leads the church to focus on counting those who are not in the church on Sunday as much, and maybe even more than those who are present on Sunday. It is our purpose and our vision that we transform people into become fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. I think as a church, we're not ever finished with someone until they themselves become discipleship makers. Now let me explain. As a church, we're called to go out and reach those that are lost. We bring them into the fold of the discipleship. And I believe with all my heart, one of the craziest, strangest things the church has ever done is create thousands upon thousands of spiritual abortions every year. They come in, they baptize them, they believe them, they let them go. Hey, see you later. Hey, go join that Sunday school class and let them go. It'd be like having a child, put them in a nice, cute bassinet, little bow tie on, frilly little socks, putting all the formula around them and say, "Hey, kid, see you when you're 21. As a church, we've got to make sure that our people are coming through that process and that they themselves are then involved in discipling other people. And it's not fully done until that circle is complete. That the people we come into contact with, and they know Jesus Christ because God allowed them to be a part of our lives, that they themselves are reaching out to other people. So don't give up on your new Christians as you involve yourself in the 4x4 challenge. The first thing I need you to do is to identify 4 people that are unchurched. Now, before I get too deep into this, I want to tell you a little bit about it. The book you have is everything that I'm kind of telling you. All right? It talks about it. I gave everybody bookmarks. I also have some business cards here. The 4x4 is a church-wide evangelism program. All right? My pastor, he offers the sermons and stuff that he preached on those, but if he was standing here, he would tell you the same thing I do, that I'm about to tell you, that if God moves you in the direction of taking 4x4, you can develop the things that are passionate about 4x4 in your life and probably preach a better sermon than he ever did. And he would tell you that. I've heard him say it 100 times. In your card, what we do is that we ask, what we did in our church and what we're asking, that are giving you the opportunity to do, is that you take these cards, you give one to every single member of your church, you explain the 4x4 challenge, or you explain 4x4. The first thing you do is you identify 4 people who are unchurched. Okay, now this takes somebody outside of their comfort zone. You mean I got to go outside of my little ball of wax and meet people? Yes. Where do I find people? Well, last time I checked, when you're walking down the grocery store aisle, there's people in there you don't know. Last time I checked, if you got kids on their ball teams that don't know Christ. Last time I checked, when you go to Starbucks and you roll up in there and get a double frappuccino latte mocha started with tall grande, whatever it's called, there's people in there who don't know Christ. Because see, to identify someone has to mean that what Christ did to me, for me, is important. Because if what Christ did 2,000 years ago is not important to me, then I'm not going to do anything about it. Please hear me out. I want to ask you to do me a favor. Who can tell me what a preposition is? Talk to me. Oh, anywhere a squirrel can go, my 8th grade teacher, Miss Rosart, told me. Anywhere a squirrel can go is a preposition. In, there, up. I want you to take this word, this preposition, completely out of your vocabulary, the word in. You ready? Take it out. Because I believe as Christians and as a church that we have learned to believe in God rather than learn to believe God. We believe in God and we think we're okay, but let me tell you, last time I checked, I can believe in soap and I can die dirty. If you don't believe me, come to my house. You can watch my little 6-year-old dance around the shower. That soap sit right there and him not doing anything with it. I had to kick his little honey back in there, poof, get in there, and then you have to wash him yourself. See, there's a thing in our lives that we come to the place and point where we say, I believe in Jesus, but the belief in Jesus is great and wonderful. But until we believe Jesus, when He said, I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. I came that you might be able to have no reason to not go out and tell someone about who Christ is. I came that even though they persecute you, guess what? They did it to me first. He said, suck it up. Do it anyway. Last time I checked, I'm not the one being asked to sacrifice myself. I'm not the one being asked for pain. I may have a door slammed in my face. I may have somebody tell me no. Oh my God, don't break my heart and tell me no. Jesus says that's what we're here to do. So am I going to ask you to identify 4 unchurched non-believers? Yes, I am. And I'm not going to apologize to you about it. I'm not going to apologize to you about it. Why would I? That's what you're asked to do. Why would you have to apologize to your church? I'm asking you to identify 4 people who are unchurched and lost and put them on a card. And I want you to just identify them. That's all you got to do. Identify them, put them on your card, put them on your bookmark, and hang on to them. If they have a problem with it, do me a favor. Go win them to Jesus. They take this card, and that's what you have to do. The first thing you got to do is identify. Identify 4 people. All right? Identify 4 people. When we get done, I'm going to tell you about a little twist. But right now, we're going to stick with the plain Jane. I'll identify 4 people. That's everybody in your church. Every man, woman, high school player, high school person, teenager, whatever. Identify 4. You think a teenager's not going to do that? Ha! I swelled up like a big old puffer fish on Sunday. I looked over at my 13-year-old son. He's a 7th grader at Riverwood Middle School. I looked across, and on one side of him was Victor Hershey, a young man he played football with who's only lived in America for a year and a half. On the next to him was Nolan Powell, a young man that he plays baseball with, whose parents have just recently got a divorce. Next to him was a little young lady who's grown up Catholic, and the little girl next to her had never been to church before in her life, and she's lived in Kingwood all her life. On Sunday, dude, I swelled up like a puffer fish. I didn't tell him to do it. Just 2 Sundays before, that same 7th grade boy who was a starter on the 18 football, lead scorer on his basketball team, bawled like a baby in the middle of church when Victor got baptized. Because Aaron sat down and put Victor on his card. Made the difference. Identify 4 people who are unchurched, and don't be ashamed of it. Identify Luke 6:12 and 13. Just a verse, a reference verse that you can write down there. I'm not going to take up our time today. to go through that. I want you to look that up. We don't have a whole lot of time, and I want to be able to run through this with you. You want to then intercede. Intercede. This is where I'm asking you to take the 4 people whom you've identified. Now get this, okay? I'm not even asking you that you have to go up and create a relationship with these people yet. I'm asking you just to identify them. And then I'm asking you to intercede. To pray for each one of these 4 times a week that they might come to know Christ. Pray for these people 4 times a week that they themselves might come to know Christ. And if they got a problem with prayer, I need you to do me a favor. Go win them to Jesus. Praying for these people 4 times in their week, during their week. And if you check out John 17, 20 and 21. Yes, sir.
That's praying with them?
No, sir, praying for them. For them, not with them. We ain't even touched them yet. We're praying for them. So we're giving God His ample opportunity to get in and do stuff. And right now, we're just doing what we're called to do. Pray for your 4 in verse 20, verse 21. Pray for the 4 with a genuine relationship with Jesus Christ. 21b, pray that your 4 will be disciples of Christ. You are just praying. Number 3 is where it gets kind of interesting. Invest. Investing in these people and in all of their lives. We are investing in them by meeting them, spending time with them, finding out who they are. Now, please hear me. When I say invest, I'm not talking about meeting them for one time, jerking them by the hair of the head, and dragging them to the church house, kicking and screaming. This may be a year process. Okay? This may be 6 months process. Right? The Pucci family, Carrie and Frank, I coached their son this year in 6 and 7-year-old football. It's more like herding cats than it was coaching football. But I was coaching Aiden. His name is Aiden. My son's name is Aiden. They became the best of friends. We call them the A-team. One would go this way, one would go that way, and somewhere some ball carrier went down. It's just the way they act. They weren't. But Carrie and Frank works overseas. They had been involved in another denomination that was out there. My Aiden, 7 years old, asked Aiden Pucci, hey, we're having a Halloween thing in our church tonight. You want to come? Aiden said, yeah. And then he started yakking in Mama's ear. Yakking, 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 yakking. Guess what? They showed up. Frank and Carrie have been on my wife and I's 4x4 list since August of this past year during football season. We met them in July, August. They became on our prayer list. They became on our 4x4 list because the Hershey's went off. The Hershey's came to the church. We baptized the Hershey's, brought them. God was unbelievably gracious in that whole situation. Put them on our list, and we began to pray. We just began to pray. Frank works overseas. When he comes home, he likes to go to the woods. I grew up in the woods. I'd rather be knee-deep in swamp mud than anything else in the world. 4x4 tires stuck to the belly, it doesn't matter. Frank and I go out in the woods and hang out. 2 or 3 months of that. Maggie reaching out to Miss Carrie, and little by little, they ended up in the church. My wife teaches a young ladies class, a life group that we call it in our girls' ministry. Their oldest daughter came to our life group. Their son came to our Disciple Now, and now the whole entire family's there because a 7-year-old, get you, a 7-year-old, not knowing what he's doing, invested in another 7-year-old, said, hey, let's go to a Halloween carnival together. Or, I'm sorry, fall festival, okay? Drives me nuts. Let's go to a fall festival together and let's have some fun. He doesn't know what he's doing. But the whole family has come along. And it's gotten so, we've invested in these guys and it's still working on it because we know Frank's still lost, but we're still working and working and working. Frank's out of the country, works in Saudi Arabia half the time. Then on Tuesday night, 3 of their 4 kids are coming to spend the night at our house because they got to take the other one to Dallas to have a procedure done on an illness that he has, but they've asked us, because we've spent time and invested, to take care of their kids. We did it with bells on. Throw down air mattresses, section off upstairs for the girls, and let them have at it. It takes time to invest. Did I go out and immediately go find Frank and Carrie? No, God brought them into my life. But I was openly looking for people because I understood that there had to be a process in which I came in contact with people along the way. You realize when he said, "Go ye therefore into all nations, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, along with you always, even to the ends of the earth." He says, go. Let me tell you something about go, and you may have heard this 1,000 times, I don't know, but in Greek, there is different forms of verb. If you know other languages and stuff, they have different forms. Well, in Greek, there's a verb tense that's called durative action. Durative action verb is kind of the best way I can explain to you is a circle verb. It has no beginning, it has no end. The word go in Greek is a durative action verb, means as you're going, which has no beginning and end, as you're going through your life, go and do these things. Because see, Jesus is making an assumption that what he was about to do on the cross, or what he had just done on the cross, was so important that it wouldn't be a big deal for us to go. He assumed that we would go. Now I had a 8th grade football coach, Mr. Willis. Poor Mr. Willis. I had an 8th grade football coach, Mr. Willis, and he said, "Boys, I assume that you're going to do what I ask you to do." And he wrote the word assume on the board. A-S-S-U-M-E. And he said, "If you don't do it, it's going to make an A-S-S out of you and me, and I'll run your tails off." If Jesus is assuming that we're going, shouldn't we be going? Shouldn't we be doing? If we're looking for people as we go, as we walk through life to invest in who they are, doesn't it make sense that God's going to bring people into our lives? Now, it's easy for me because my kids are in sports. I got 3 boys and they're sportsaholics and they're running all over the place. My wife and I, we kind of catch each other as we pass, okay? But it's one of those things where I could tell you story after story of people that God's put in our life, and I believe it's because that there's a process. And please hear me, I say this not because I'm a student pastor. I say this not because I've got an MDiv and all these degrees and yada, yada, yada. I say this because it's a process that God put us into as a Christian that we need to be going. If we work the process, God's going to be there. Because I believe with all my heart that the more we're open to people coming, the more we're open to people coming into our lives, the more people God's going to bring there. Because why in the world would God bring someone into our lives for us to lead to Christ if we're not going to do it in the first place? And if God's not, please don't throw anything at me. But I'm just talking out of love. I've been doing church a long time, okay? 20 years full-time church stuff, okay? I got more degrees you can shake a stick at. But if you're looking at me and you're saying God's not, some of you are sitting there thinking, God's not bringing these type of people into my life, please understand that those are God's valuable resources, and He's not going to use them up on a car that ain't going to go nowhere. I say that out of love. I say that out of passion. Please know and understand me. If it ain't happening in your life, it ain't God's fault. And I can tell you where I was, driving across a bridge when I asked God what my problem was. And then I looked up in the rearview mirror and I saw it. It was me. Invest. We can see throughout the New Testament God takes the opportunity to invest in people's lives. Luke 5:29 through 32. Invite investor. The 4 that are there. Do not distract. Whoops, got to go to the next one. Do not be distracted. Invest in your 4x4 intentionally. It can't just be, hey, we'll have coffee once a month. It's got to be a continual deal as we invest in who they are. Now, the hardest part in all of this is the invite. You're 4 people to a special event. It's at your church or planned for them. You're people to worship or Bible study. You're 4 people to worship or Bible study that they can become comfortable with you and with the church. Now, as you do this, let me give you some examples. We host 4x4 events that our church knows that they're 4x4 events, okay? We advertise them as 4x4 events, but when we get to those, we don't say, hey, welcome to our 4x4 event. Guess what? You're lost. You're here because somebody brought you. Yeah, we don't do that. We host 4x4 events with purpose and for reasons, so that they can meet other members of our church, so that they can meet other people. The Fall Festival is set up as a 4x4 event. Did my 7-year-old know that when he invited his friend Aiden? No. Because see, when they come to that Fall Festival event, we get their name, their address, we get all the kind of information that we can after them, and then within 48 hours, we have someone in their home. Because we're intentional about what we're doing. And for the Fall Festival, if we're after those people, it was my responsibility to put those people in different groups and send ministers and teams out there and make sure every home got visited. 2 days after that, I went to every guy on my staff, every guy on our team, and I said, hey, did you visit these people? Not this one. All right, go. Did you go to these? No, I hadn't had time to yet. All right, well, hey, turn your light off, shut your door, get out the door, go. It's got to be it's got to be a point where we say, hey, the buck stops here. I've got to make it happen. Because you and I both know that if we don't make it happen, it ain't going to happen. If someone doesn't take ownership of it, it's not going to happen. And if we don't follow up, we might as well not have spent the money for the Fall Festival. They get plenty of candy walking up and down the streets of your neighborhoods. We do an event in September called Roundup. We have cooking teams from every Sunday school class, or almost every adult Sunday school class. They bring in the big smokers and the big cookers, and we cook thousands of pounds of meat, and we feed the entire church. But we ask our members to bring a friend. We have a short worship service, sing, raise the roof. Pastor gives a little message, invite someone to come to know Christ, and we eat. It's intended for our 4x4s. We do an Easter egg scramble for our 4x4s. Last year, we went through 75,000 eggs. 75,000 eggs. We had 687 new families, or families not affiliated to our church, attend. Out of those 687 families, 313 of those families did not have a church. Guess what? Within 48 hours, those 313 homes got an in-home visit from our church. Why? Because it's important. Well, you must have a huge staff. You must have all this. No, we had volunteers who are passionate about 4x4, who are passionate about what they're doing in their own lives, about their own Christian walk, because they want to see themselves grow. And we invite them to come be a part. See, it's not rocket science. I told you that. But it's Jesus science. It's Jesus science from the standpoint of He said, go and I'm with you. It's Jesus science from the standpoint of He said, no matter what they do to you, they've already done it to me. As we invite John 1:45 through 49, we invite them to find what we have found. Your invite may have an objection. They may say no, and if they do, that's okay. What's it going to hurt you for them to say no? Try again later. Invite for the purpose of introduction to your church, introduction to your people. We put tools in our hands of our people. I'm going to send some of these around. There's no rocket science in these. These are just cards with a Roman road on them. We ask our people to hang on to them and carry them around. We'll take some and just pass them down and around. There's no rocket science to them. It's just a tool. But the thing about the tools that I'm giving you now, the things about the tool of this thing called 4x4 is that if you don't use the tool, it's not going to do any good. It's not going to do any good. 4x4 may be a little bit different way to do evangelism, but I can tell you this, that of the 75% of the people that live in our community that are unchurched, if we don't start looking at those people, their Bible says that there'll be a time when God looks at those people. God will look at those people, and I wonder what that's going to be like. When the people who have passed through my life and I've not taken the opportunity to share Christ with them. I'm haunted to this day by an opportunity that happened 15 years ago. I was driving a van full of college students to an event, pulled into the parking area, and the lady said, "Hey, it'll be $10 to park." I reached into my pocket to get it to $10, and I was fumbling around, and in my mind, there's no way to explain it other than God himself said, "Hey, tell her about a place where you'll never have to pay to park." I pulled the $10 out of my pocket and said, "Hey, ma'am, have a nice day," and I drove on in. To this day, it haunts me. I have a perfect opportunity that God even gave me the words to say, but I chose not to. It's our job. Christ did his part. If you flip to the back of the book, we win. But it's our job. There's 75% of those people that are around us. If you don't know the number of people who are in your community that don't go to church or is not in church, I want to encourage you to find that. I don't ask you that for crazy reasons, because see, I know that there's 79,200 and change within a 5-mile radius of my church that doesn't go to church. Why do I know that? Because I came here to impress you? No. Because 2.5 years ago, my pastor shared with me that idea to say, hey, these are the people you need to reach. And if you'll just do it in 3 or 4 weeks, it'll be fine. I laughed at him. A couple things you need to know. And then we'll get on to some questions. How do you navigate this? Number one, do the math. Churches have spent a long time fighting over 25% of the people. If you look at the number of people in your community and you take the number of people who are not in church on Sunday, I promise you this, if all those people decided to go to church on one Sunday, you would fill up every single church house in your community and every offering plate would be full. Number two, choose your focus. Who do you want to reach? Why do you want to reach them? How are you going to do that? You've got to address the fear of losing some, because we ain't ever done it this way before. Yeah, well, that's okay. You need to find a filter. If you yourself are involved in the strategic planning of your church, found someone that's a safe place to bounce ideas like this off of, develop a rapport so that they're not just a yes man or a yes woman. That they're willing and that they're able to invest in your life and invest in who you are, that they'll tell you the truth straight up. Number 4, as you come across the opponents, attack the problem, not the people. God's people don't always understand where we are headed as a church, but it's not our job to beat that understanding into them. Articulate the problem. Articulate the problem and love them on board. Number 5, don't quit. Don't quit. Don't quit. Last time I checked, Scripture says Satan's like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Don't quit. There's too much at risk. I'm not sure how Judgment Day is going to look. I'm not sure how it's going to go. But I have this crazy fear that somewhere on the outside of heaven, before I get to walk through the gates, that judgment is going to happen. And although there'll be no tears in heaven, I'm not quite yet. And somehow I'm going to experience the heartbreak of seeing people who pass through my life being told, depart from me, for I never knew you. And so help me goodness, if that parking lot attendant lady, in the blue coat and the yellow straps and the ball cap tilted just to the side is in that line, it's my fault. It's my fault. Because I never told her. Please, don't let it ever be your fault. 4x4 may not be for you, may not be for your church. But if there is no process, and there is no inspection of the process, then I beg you find something that works for your church.